Hurricane watches are out along the North Carolina coastline in anticipation of Ophelia. Good evening, I'm Mike Nasa with this 11 p.m. Friday night update on the tropics. We have a tropical storm there off the North Carolina coastline. Winds of 70 miles per hour perched just below hurricane strength, headed towards landfall along the North Carolina coast. We also have a high likelihood of development out here. This system, very close to becoming a tropical depression, should continue towards the west-northwest over the next few days. We are not going to focus on that right now. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Ophelia as of 11 p.m. from the National Hurricane Center. Ophelia was at 33.6 north, 76.8 west, winds of 70, like I said, almost a hurricane. It's moving north-northwest at 12 around the periphery of a ridge of high pressure, and that should continue, eventually bringing it north and northeast. However, it is going to bring tropical storm conditions to a large area of the mid-Atlantic. We have a hurricane watch in effect north of Surf City, North Carolina to Ocracoke Inlet, and we have a tropical storm warning from Cape Fear, North Carolina to Fenwick, Delaware. That includes Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds, tidal Potomac south of Cobb Island, and Chesapeake Bay south of North Beach. So again, this entire region here expected to have tropical storm conditions with the hurricane conditions possible right there along the North Carolina coastline. It's possible that Ophelia can briefly become a hurricane prior to landfall. It's also possible it could become a hurricane and then go back down to a tropical storm before it makes landfall. Either way, tropical storm conditions occurring along the coastline. Right now, when I look at some buoys, in fact, if I update this, we've had winds gusting 54 knots, 56 knots. This is up getting closer to hurricane force in some of these buoys. So it's not there yet, but definitely a strong tropical storm type gust. And these are all right along the North Carolina coastline there, showing very, very gusty winds as well as high swells. Here's the infrared satellite imagery, and Ophelia's center is still sitting right here. It's looking a little bit better organized as well as far as the tropical organization. It is not a subtropical storm. It is tropical. However, it is still not in a perfect environment for strengthening, which is why if it does become a hurricane, it would only be a Category 1. And like the Hurricane Center said, there's a very small difference between 70 miles per hour and a 75 mile per hour hurricane. But calling it a hurricane gives it a certain stature in criteria. Again, the cloud shield goes all the way back to the Ohio Valley. This should continue inland and then eventually turn. It will weaken once it moves inland and eventually dissipate, but not before bringing heavy rainfall and high water rises. Now here's the water rise storm surge predicted. This is anywhere from 4 to 6 feet in many of these areas, including Pamlico River area, the Neuse River, 4 to 6 feet, Albemarle Sound, 2 to 4, here in Hatteras, 2 to 4, all the way up to Chincoteague. You guys can have water rises. We've already seen some pictures of that on Friday, and it's only going to get worse as that onshore flow continues around Ophelia. Ophelia should make landfall. Where's it going to make landfall? Let's look at the radar. The center here, it looked like it was trying to loop an eye, but now it doesn't look quite as well organized. If it continues in this direction, very close to Wilmington, that's probably the area where I would say it will come ashore, but it's not a tightly coiled hurricane or anything like that. So even if it makes landfall in Wrightsville Beach, obviously you're going to have tropical storm conditions far and away from the center. Here's the further out view. Look at all this rain over South Carolina. Myrtle Beach, you guys are just getting hammered with rainfall tonight. It's a very stormy night, even more so right now than areas up further north towards the Outer Banks. So again, the wet weather is inland for the most part, but there's more offshore, and it's all going to move in as Ophelia makes landfall. How much rain are we talking about? Maybe 6 to 10 inches there where I told you, Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach, right along the coastline, isolated higher amounts. That's going to continue all the way up towards Richmond, and you guys are going to have a lot of heavy rain here in areas of the mid-Atlantic, all the way up to Cape Cod, Nantucket. You guys are going to get in on at least 2 to 4 inches of rain in a lot of this area, and that's why we have now moderate risks of flooding. We had marginal the other day, then slight. Now we have some moderate risks in Virginia and right along the coast between Wilmington and Hatteras. That is a very definite flood risk with Ophelia. The key messages as of 11 p.m. from the National Hurricane Center. Number one, tropical storm conditions expected along the southeast and mid-Atlantic coast in that warning area. Hurricane conditions possible within the watch area early on Saturday. This is overnight tonight, early in the morning. Hurricane conditions, especially in gusts, are possible. If it's a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm and 74 makes it a hurricane, you could definitely have gusts over hurricane force, if not sustained winds. Secondly, the danger of a life-threatening storm surge inundation for eastern North Carolina, southeast Virginia, including Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds, the Neuse and Pamlico River, the lower James River, and the lower Chesapeake Bay. We have storm surge warnings out in that area, and residents should listen to local officials. The heavy rainfall, like I mentioned, it could produce flash and urban flooding impacts across the mid-Atlantic from North Carolina to New Jersey. This will continue all weekend, by the way, and you can see in many videos of heavy rain, they could have serious flash flooding in the mid-Atlantic. It can happen very quick, so we're going to watch that. And as I mentioned, swells, rip tides, stay out of the water if you're even going to the beach. It's getting to be kind of late in the year for that, but I got knocked down by a good wave in South Carolina at Myrtle Beach back in 2019, and that was just regular soft surf. So I can't imagine the type of waves you'd get with a tropical cyclone, not to mention the very deadly rip currents. A lot of people drown because they go out in the water with the rip currents, even if they're not in the storm anywhere in this region, could have very high swells and rip currents. So again, we'll continue to watch Tropical Storm Ophelia as it zeroes in on the North Carolina coastline. Right now, not a hurricane, but it could get close. If you're in areas there of Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach, Holly Ridge, you guys are right in the path of the center of whatever this becomes. It looks like it'll make landfall as a strong tropical storm at the very least, with widespread impacts of heavy rain and gusty winds. I'm Mike Nasa with the latest on Ophelia, and I'll talk to you next time.